Hi guys, this is Njeri. Welcome to the Love and Life show, where we discuss music, literature, love and life. Hi guys, welcome to the Love and Life podcast. I am your host Njeri, and today's topic is essentially about career paths in an African community, career paths in a conventional career pathic way community. And I have a lovely guest here with me today, blood by choice, lovers by choice, my sweet amazing cousin Wangu Mwenda. Tell us about yourself, baby.
Hi guys, my name is Wangu. I am a UX designer / design researcher, almost the same thing. I am young. I'm a young adult and I mean I'm just trying to figure life out like the rest of us.
Okay, that's nice. Sounds like our New York book. Just young and trying to figure life out.
It's like whimsical and mysterious. Doesn't give too much away.
What is your background as a user experience designer? Your life as a career girl and job experience. Career girl and work experience. Umeandika kwa LinkedIn.
Do I just say my entire resume?
Yeah, please do.
To anyone who's listening. I mean, like from the beginning or from the time I started working?
I think from the time when you had your first internship. You remember there's one we used to talk about, used to discuss.
Right.
Yeah, from that to Skyline and now. Oh, guys have good news. But you don't want to jinx it. Okay, yeah?
I worked there. Technically, I got my offer.
Good things are coming. Good things are going. Anyway.
So I guess I'll try to simplify this. But I started working when I was 17. To give context, I am turning 21 next month. Happy early birthday to me.
You can drink in Europe legally.
No, I can drink in Europe. I can't drink in the States.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So now I can go back and have fun. But yeah, so I started working when I was 17 because I, number one, had very strong views on education. So I really was particular with the way in which curriculums were set up. And when I was browsing through a lot of programs in Nairobi, I wasn't really satisfied with some of the outcomes that I would get, and I just felt like it wasn't necessarily the path for me in regards to how I wanted to achieve what I wanted to achieve. Which is, it's not like I necessarily knew. I just didn't really want to spend 4 years on an assumption, right? Like, I feel like when you leave high school, you really don't know much about the world, and you also don't know much about yourself because you're in a very prefabricated environment. Things are taught to you, rules are given to you. Your day is set up in a way that is not necessarily, you don't design your day when you're in high school. It's more or less just something you have to oblige to. So you're not really at a point where you have a lot of autonomy over your life, and because of that, you don't really see yourself as a decision maker when it comes to how you want to live, what you want to do. So I always feel 16, 17, 18 is just a really young age for you to be aware of who you want to be 5-10 years down the line. And that's why I was just I had assumptions as to what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to enter into communication and PR because everyone was like, oh, you're a great writer, you're a great communicator. So I was like, okay, of course this is what I should do. So rather than doing a communications and PR degree, which was what I was originally going to do, I just interned at a PR house. And that's like a very long story as to how I got there, but basically when I got there I realized like, oh, I don't really find joy in doing like press releases and like communication and whatnot, like really just the things that are done in a PR house. But luckily what I was brought on to do wasn't even necessarily PR. It was way more like business development. It's just that now I had the advantage to get visibility towards like PR. And I was like, oh wow, okay, I don't want to do that. But what I am doing is actually something I like, and that was like BD work. And I started, getting more into that, and luckily my job at that time required me to do a lot of like, we call them co-design sessions in like my field of work, which is when you bring people into a room that you're trying to help or trying to create a solution for, and you figure out the problem space together, and you try to come up with solutions with the people that actually need them, rather than doing it in a way that you think what their problems are. And while I was doing that, that kind of exposed me to like a lot of design philosophies and design methodologies. I got exposed to like design as a concept, in that we're all aware of like problem solving from a very young age, and I've always been someone who like likes critical thinking, and just likes solving things, especially like these like complex systems that don't really have any solution, and you probably won't ever find one. But I never knew that, like I never really saw how I would do that as a job, like being someone who comes up with ideas, you don't know how to like create a job out of that other than being an entrepreneur. So with design, it was like, oh, this is what you do, like you solve people's problems, and it was just really interesting to me because I had never been aware of it. And so from my first company, when I moved to my second company, that's when I moved into being a junior UX designer at my company. Worked there for a while, and then later on became a UX designer for Skyline, which was an agency. And I always, they called me the UX lead. I always say like I was a lead of one. But it was really fun because you do get I was able to own the entire UX process there, which I hadn't been able to do before that. And then, I'm currently moving on to my next job in next week. So I hope that was not too long, but that's kind of like a brief overview of my career journey so far.
What do you do as a UX designer?
Like a day-to-day?
Yeah. What is your job?
So the role of UX is typically one that is integrated into a tech team. It doesn't have to be, but a lot of times it is. So when you look at user experience, I always just try to give the example of a common app that everyone uses. So let's look at Uber in this case. So, you as Njeri use Uber, right? Like you're aware of the app and its interface and how it looks. But there are people that have to figure out how it's actually going to work. And a lot of people, even like people outside of tech, are aware of coders. They're aware of what coders do. Like they build apps. They're not really aware of what UX designers do, right? So UX designers are like the people that come before the coding process. And what you do is like, if there's a concept like Uber, right? That's a ride-hailing app. You have to figure out who exactly are the people who are going to be using this application, what are their behaviors, and then you actually have to quite literally map out the entirety of the application from start to finish and understand what are the most what are the primary ways that people are going to use this application. So in this way, obviously people are just, they're going to use it to get a car, to maybe go home, to go to work, whatnot. There are other use cases for corporates who are paying for their employees, for example. And then you have to also look at the fact that there are two different personas, right? Well, there are more, but in this case you have the people who are requesting the car, and then you have the drivers who are the supply, right? And you have to design for both of those, because both of those are a completely different experience. And I usually say that, like, one of the reasons why I find UX so important is, like, my mom she's extremely intelligent. She has a PhD, which I doubt I will ever do, and she still calls me to order her Ubers. And I feel like you can attest to this, like, if your mom calls you to I've seen it with most of my friends. And I know your mom is also extremely intelligent. She's a lawyer. But so you realize that there are people who use applications, but they don't know how to use them, or they don't know they don't know how to use them, and that's a problem, right? Because if we're entering into a world where tech is, like, more and more ubiquitous, people have to be able to use it. So it's about creating things that are designed for the people who are going to actually be using the application, not in a way where they have to struggle to learn how to use your product, but in a way in which you're the one serving them to an extent. So I would say that's an overview of what UX is. In regards to what we do, I'll simplify it by just saying, like, a lot of research, a lot of talking to people, and you make a lot of friends.
Reports.
Make a lot of friends. If you are doing UX for, Safe Buddha, you will make a lot of friends with writers, because you are always talking to them. You're always asking them, like, boss, like, what are your problems? And trust me, they will tell you their problems for hours. You become an advocate of sorts, and you're the one to report to your team, like, we need to change these things, or we can add these things, and then figure out how that's gonna look like.
It's so interesting. I'm thinking about how we're talking about modern day jobs, and I'm thinking how people are so uninformed on the presence of such jobs. Like, who would think that there's a person who goes to do research and design for you things and be like, "Auntie, uko sawa na kazi yako, you get?" Like, it's so crazy. I think we're going to dive into that later, but user experience is interesting.
It is.
Yeah, it really is. So we wanted to start off by talking about like the typical life, the typical life of from primary to secondary school, university, postgraduate, and marriage and kids. That's where we wanted to kick off, to give up a picture of us breaking out of the norm. So Wangu, start for us.
How I view it,
how you view it, how you've heard people talk about it, the complaining and the sadness in, I won't say your mother's eyes, but the sadness in your uncle's eyes from 8 to 5. You're right.
The typical monamchi kind of.
The monamchi, the KOT angry man who hates his life.
Sitting in a mat to just like being like, why is this happening?
No makanga nipe change yangu.
We were talking about that the other day, actually, with some of my family, of just how it's so easy to be mad in Nairobi. Like, it's so easy for your life to become so, like,
there's this new
bitter.
slogan in Kenya, you'll either laugh or cry. You need to choose one. Like, you just need to laugh at your problems or cry.
I feel like
kama uliwi na coronavirus ni locust, kama si locust ni a politician amekushutu kwa club, guys.
It is it is real out here. Like, Nairobi is very there's a day I was thinking about, like, I literally had this train of thought when I was just like, if you can live in Nairobi, you can live anywhere. That's the same day I had a boda accident. And it's like, that's what it's a very like intense city on multiple ways. I feel like we don't. I talk a lot about this with my friends and with my family, but like psychologically, living in Nairobi is very, like, it's heavy.
Always struggling, and it's not even financial struggles, but you're just trying to survive and breathe.
Right.
And that is, you're just like, oh no. Even because we're diving into typical life. I'm thinking of how it starts, like the struggle starts in high school, because even primary, I feel like there's some sort of, you're kind of unaware of what's waiting for you. But in high school, there's a way that it starts with career day, and you're asked what you want to do. And you know the choppies have flyers, they have notebooks, they're going to the desks of lawyer, engineering, and the thing is, these schools never expose you to user experience schools. You get what I mean? Graphic design schools, and that's where the hustle begins. And the environment only exposes you to what you said, a fabricated community of this is the jobs that are offered.
Right.
And so you're struggling from there, and from that, if there's lack of knowledge, definitely you won't know that there's a school and there's an opportunity for you to do things that you're good at, and you transition into uni, and you've chosen BCom, and you're very sad, and you've gone to uni, your motivation to go to uni every day is the parties and the life. So it's like struggle, and even with the struggle, that's where the happiness comes from, going out, living life, kuchikina madem.
I mean, like, Kenyans have a very like notorious reputation for how much we drink and how much we party. But I think it's like, if you see the day-to-day life of like an average Kenyan and how much you actually have to go through mentally, you kind of understand why people feel the need to find release to such a borderline dangerous extent.
That is very, very true.
And so that's why I say, like, that guy who's sitting in a mat at 5 p.m. It's not, I can't blame him for being angry. I can't be like, oh, you chose this, you're the one who wasn't like bold enough to pursue your dreams. No, like, we don't necessarily have a society or economy that supports people in a way that people feel safe to branch out and do things that don't have a guaranteed outcome. You know, when you look at medicine and law, they are safe paths, because as much as there are that, it's pretty controversial, you are more or less guaranteed of like a good job or a good income if you complete medical school, right? Or if you complete law school and like pass the bar. Like, your chances of being okay are much higher than if you decide to do graphic design. And especially if you're not, from a home that's privileged enough to support you, like, in that process. So I'm not
figuring things out.
When I talk to people about like pursuing what you really want to do, or like breaking the norm, or trying to go against society, I say that as well, understanding that there's no, like, you shouldn't feel shame, or like you shouldn't feel bad about pursuing a career specifically because it's safe, right? Like, it's a valid thing, and I think that's what most Kenyans do, which is like, they're just trying to ensure their future, right? Like, it's very valid. And so I think, like, even as we like talk about this, it's coming from a place of like understanding. Like, I'm very privileged, you are very privileged. We've both gone to ADMI. ADMI is not a place that everyone can go to, especially in Kenya. And just my life experiences, especially having grown up in the States and then coming back and going to a British school, and it's one of those things where like my life was set up in a way that was very differently from other people. So when I look at like the whole primary, secondary, college experience, I think it's just a lot of it just has to do with how you're raised, but you take on a lot of the fear of your parents, and again, it comes from a place of trying to secure a future in a country where it just seems really hard to. Yeah. I guess, are we still on track? Does that answer the question? I hope so.
We digress kidogo, but there's something you've pointed out on, like, early childhood about fear of parents. Yeah, and fear of parents is definitely a contributing factor to limitations on career choices and what you truly want to do. So I 100% agree with that, and I feel like we recently went to a Monday report on Citizen. Yeah, it was a panel talking about work and the future of work. Yeah, and what happens. And we were saying, there's a lady who talked about how homes are very, because home is where you stay the most of the day, and these are the people who you surround yourself with. Right. And she was talking about how these parents are not aware. Parents are very, like, they impose these things, right, like the ideal paths on their kids. Yeah, and that's where it starts, and I'm happy you pointed that out. Definitely. And so on how university life goes. Remember, we were using my sister as a reference. Guys, my sister is an engineer in Juja. We're not throwing shit to engineers and
Shout out to Lorraine.
Doctors. Shout out to her. She's in 5th year.
She is one of the strongest people I know.
And every single year, she always complains about dropping out, but we love you and thank you for holding on.
She's an inspiration to us all.
Yeah. And so we were talking about how after graduating, you definitely join a public institution for an internship, or you become a banker, and you end up getting married at 30. Yeah, you end up you cross your fingers. Yeah. And you stay in a job, and from then on, after maternity leave, you're going back to school, you're going back to work, and you stay in a job where you're working 8 to 5. You don't know what you're doing and the reason why you're doing it. There's high levels of depression these days. According to recent media reports, there's high reports of depression these days, and it's a result of this. It's a result of not identifying that there's a problem, and a contributing factor to the problem is not figuring out what you're doing and why you're doing it, and what it is you're doing. Yeah. So Wango, if you could guide us and let us know, what was the moment you decided to break out of the norm, and what was the reason that gave you the confidence? What gave you the confidence to do it, even after you've seen that things like medicine and engineering are the sure way of getting by life? What made you not go through that?
That's a good question. Like like we were just saying, I would say, like, number one, just the privilege of having a supportive, stable home environment, meaning that I have two parents who were working full time, so I didn't necessarily have any, like, real responsibilities, whereas I know a lot of Kenyans, even at an early age, you are responsible for other people, even financially, which again, that's limiting when it comes to talking about breaking out of the norm, so to speak. Like, you don't have that option. So I had a very, like, stable environment at home, and then also my mom, like, her PhD is in education, and so, you would expect that she would be very, very particular about me and my sister going to school, obviously, but I think her experiences made her very open to how people pursue education, just because she was so exposed to how learning works in general. Like, she's very aware that learning comes in different forms, that different people learn in different ways, simply because that's what she studied. Like, studying education is like studying how people learn, so it's just, Yeah, she was in a very, I would say, good place to be able to handle someone like me. And my dad is also like a very, like he's also very well educated, but he has very, he's very like relaxed in, you know, his views on life. And, you know, he's very much of the opinion that you as an individual need to figure out your own life, and not be governed by the opinions of other people. And I think having parents that both had very radical opinions themselves is really what helped me, because I'm not saying that it was easy. Like, I'm not saying that they welcomed the fact that I wasn't doing a degree with open arms. Honestly, it was the opposite. Like, they were both pretty upset, but it was more of like, it was a conversation, right? And I think a lot of people don't even get to have that. I literally had a conversation over a year and a half. I think probably took like 2 years for my parents to accept that I was not going to school. And so again, I would say a huge part of it comes back to parents, right? Where it's like, number one, because parents set the culture, they set the environment. So if they create a space where you feel like they're not going to punish you, they're not going to disown you, they're going to allow you to fail, so to speak, you feel better doing it. You know, your chances are better. Other than that, like, I read a lot of like education reform literature in high school, so I had already gotten myself pretty exposed to what it meant to be very self-directed in learning, as well as like just reading a lot of like radical views on how education could be, was very impactful. There's a quote that I really love